Peace. Huh. Peace, 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 peace. Power. Power. Mad liberator, death operator, rock the data, amazing flavor. Yo, the way I feel, sometimes it's too hard to sit still. Things are so passionate, times are so real. Sometimes I try to chill, mellow down, blow a smoke. A smile on my face, but it's really no joke. You feel it in the street, that people breathe without hope. They going through the motion, they dimming down the focus. The focus get cleared, and the light turns sharp, and the eyes grow teary, the mind grow weary. I speak it so clearly, sometimes y'all don't hear me. I push it past the base, no nations got to feel me. I feel it in my bones, black, I'm so wide awake that I'm hardly ever sleep. My flow forever deep, and it's volumes of scriptures when I breathe on a beat. My presence speak volumes before I say a word. I'm everywhere, penthouse, pavement, the curb, cradle to the grave, so cathedral of a shell. Universal ghetto life, holla black, you know it well. Quiet storm, vital form, pen push the bright across. Mind is a vital force, hollow right across. Soul is the lion's roar, voice is the siren. I swing round, ring out, and bring down the tyrant. Chop a small axe and knock a giant lopsided. The world is so dangerous, there's no need for frightened. The suckers tryna hide like the struggle won't find them. Then the sun busts through the cloud to clearly remind them this everywhere. Penthouse, pavement, the curb, cradle to the grave, talk cathedral of a shell. Universal ghetto life, holla black, you know it well what it is. You know, they know what it is. We know, y'all know what it is. Ecstatic, there it is. Huh, what it is. You know, we know what it is. They know, y'all know what it is. You know, here it is. What it is, you know, we know what it is. They know, y'all know what it is. You know, here it is. Peace, power. Fantastic. Original. And always on time. And rocking your mind. It's like
sit and come relax, riddle of the Mac, it's the patch. I'm a soldier in the middle of Iraq. What say about noonish, coming out the whip and looking at me curious, a young Iraqi kid carrying laundry. What's wrong, G? Hungry?
No, give me my oil, get out my country.
And in Arabian, barking other stuff till his moms come grab him and they walk off in a rush. Distrust, feeling like I was pissed up on wound. I'm like, surely hope that we can fix our differences soon. Buying apples, hun breaking on
Fruit, you take everything, why not just take the damn fruit like pasta?
I don't understand it. On another planet? 15 months of this stuff, how I'm gonna manage? And increasing this sentiment, gentlemen getting down on their Middle Eastern instruments. Realized trapping this crap. Walk over, kicked one of my fabulous raps. Arab jaw drop, they well wish, they glad rap. Now the kid considered like an Elvis of Baghdad.
هذه ما تربحش وهذه ما تربحش، هذه ما تربحش، هذه تربح، هذه تربح، لازم. هذه ما تربحش وهذه ما تربحش، دايم على لازم.
what it is.
قاعد عند نزيد شوف واحد يضحك واحد يبكي.
تو اللي بعتوك.
ايه انا اللي بعتوني. ها.
What it is, you know, they know what it is. We know, y'all know what it is. Ecstatic, there it is. Huh, what it is, you know, we know what it is. They know, y'all know what it is. You know, here it is. What it is, you know, we know what it is. They know, y'all know what it is. You know, here it is.
Keep on rocking you.
right, so there we go. Hopefully that resolves the issue. I'll find out here in a second if it doesn't, but otherwise most of us are here. When you've downloaded the connector J file here, then you're going to want to integrate it into your Eclipse project. And remember that the way that we do that is we have this lib folder, right? And so all you need to do is drag and drop this into your lib folder, right? Copy the files, do not link them. Yep, there we go, they're fixed now. Copy the files, do not link them, otherwise it will not be part of your build. Now that doesn't add it to your build path, you just need to right click it, build path, add to build path. And once that's there now, just like the XML, Xstream and XML pull there, now we are ready to start writing some JDBC code here. Before we do that, though, let's give an overview of what JDBC is. And again, our goal here is to programmatically connect to a database to process, that is load or persist, save data. Because most people are never going to be even writing SQL at the end of the day. You're writing an application for somebody who doesn't know how to code, right? And so they're not going to be working in MySQL. In fact, you're not going to be working in MySQL Workbench on a day-to-day basis unless you're a DBA, a database administrator of some sort. And even then, you probably have some better commercial tool or something. So you won't be working like this except to debug your statements, take a look, like putting in mock data, just developing stuff. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to actually write a program to programmatically connect to the database and take care of that for you, right? Most languages have a way of doing this. Most languages have a database connectivity API. And for us, that's going to be JDBC, which stands for Java Database Connectivity API, which in turn has another acronym there. API is Application Programmer Interface. We program towards this interface, not towards the database. If you'll remember, this is a perfect example of dependency inversion, right? Remember those solid principles? The D of the solid principles is dependency inversion. If you were to actually write code to connect to your database, like a specific database, then you wanted to change your database to Postgres from MySQL. You're rewriting everything. However, if you invert that dependency and you are programming towards a generic API that can be supported by any database, then you don't have to touch a single line of your code. You just take out this jar file that we put in, throw it away, and put in a Postgres jar file. This jar file is for MySQL, right? And that's a perfect illustration of dependency inversion. It is the vendor's responsibility, Oracle in this case, or if you were connecting to an Informix DB database, that would be IBM or Microsoft or whatever. They provide a driver, a library that conforms to that API. Now, the library itself is rather large, but we're going to focus on three aspects of it. A connection, to give you a connection to the database. A statement where you can prepare your statements for select, CRUD, right? Select, update, delete, etc., right? And then a result set, because if you have a select statement, you're expecting some results back. And their abstraction for that is called a result set. There are, and in the videos, I think I cover it in one of the extra videos, but there are things called ORMs, object relational models, mappings, excuse me, where like JPA or Juke, where you do not have to write this low-level JDBC code. Instead, you do what are called annotations. You say that this class's member variable corresponds to that table's column, and then it takes care of everything for you. You're welcome to try it out, just not for your project. Get it working first, and then go the extra mile and try to get this working, because what you save in development time is often paid for in configuration and setup. So I can walk you through it, but make sure that you've got JDBC done first. In fact, these two things are built on top of JDBC. All they do is add a layer of abstraction on top of that, and then ultimately they're producing JDBC code anyway. So it doesn't go out the window there. You will find this process very, very familiar. One, we're going to create a connection to our database. Two, we're going to prepare our query, right? We're going to prepare the query and then execute the query. If that query returns results, then we're going to process those results. And then finally, we're going to clean up our resources. If you've ever done file I/O, what are the 3 steps to file I/O? You open the file, you process the file for reading or writing, and then you close the file, right? This is a resource. So if you don't close the file, what happens in C or Java or whatever? You're rolling the dice, right? 9 times out of 10, it'll be perfectly fine. But it's that 1/10th time that everything gets corrupted. data doesn't get written, failure to close the file, you could even rewrite the file system or something, right? In the absolute worst case scenario. Hopefully your operating system is protecting you from that. But here it's all the more important. What if you connect to the database and then you don't clean up your resources? You don't clean up that connection. That connection is left open, right? After 5 minutes, hopefully it gets reset. But you do have a limited number of resources. You can open at most 30 connections at one time. Once you get that, once you try to open that 31st connection, that's it. They kick you out, right? And you have to sit there and wait 5 minutes for everything to reset. Hopefully it resets. And if it doesn't reset, then you're making a call to the sysadmins to fix everything for you, right? And hope that they get to it. Scott is a night bug, or a night owl, I guess. And so if he's up late at night, then if you're up late at night, then you might get his help. But if you're doing it during the day, you ain't getting Scott up. All right. All right. So that's the basic, outline there. All right. Let's just go ahead and get started over here. Now that we've got our connector J file in there, what I want to do is I want to write some Jdbc code here to support our account. Where's the annuity? I thought it was stock. Where's stock? Or savings, I guess. Did we do this? This is spring 25. What else did we do? I thought it was stock, account, and annuity, wasn't it? Oh, it's not here. Oh well, that doesn't really matter. Plant UML. Come on, no, I want savings, and there's the account. What else was in there? Did we do savings account? I thought we did a stock and annuity. I'm not sure where these are coming from. And I don't see annuity, I don't see any other stocks here. A loan maybe? No, that's an account, but the savings account is a deposit account? That's weird. I thought we did something, didn't we do something else? Maybe I overwrote it. Oh well, in any case, what we're gonna do is we're gonna get started with the person. Where's a person? Oh, I know I have a person here. Person and their emails, okay? So we've got the person who has a UUID, a first name, a last name, an address, apparently we added that, and then a bunch of emails here. Right? We're actually going to conform to the database over here. So let me go ahead and show tables. There we go. There's our account email ownership tables, right? And what is a person? So let's describe person. We might eventually have to resolve this with our design in Java there. But what is a person? They have an ID. They have a UUID, a unique identifier, a first name, middle name, and a last name. What else do they have that's not readily apparent here in this table? Emails. So describe email. Right? And we've got an email ID, an address, and a person ID. So let's go ahead and start by, I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new package here, uno.ece.jdbc, just so that I can start organizing things in different packages. For now, I'll just go ahead and call this demo, and I do want a public, a main method here. But let's go here, and what I want to do is I want to load up all the people, right? Load up all the people data from the database, including their emails. Okay. So let's go ahead and outline a function first of all. Public static list of person, right? List of persons. Load people or load persons. Right? We can go ahead and pluralize method names because that's what you're doing, right? You're loading up the people. You're loading up the persons. Let's go ahead and bring this in. No, let's bring in the list first, and then it'll know what a person is. Import the person from there. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and capture that value over here. Right? I'm just setting us up to test stuff here. Persons is equal to load persons, right? And then I can say for person P in persons, right? I'll say system.out.println P, right? I just want to load up all the data, print it out to make sure that I'm actually loading it up, okay? Now here's where the actual Jdbc comes in. Let's outline this, right? We're going to open a database connection, right? 2, we're going to formulate the query. Right? That means that we are going to prepare the query, so 2A, prepare the query, 2B, execute the query. And then finally, we're going to, because we're expecting results back, we're loading up the people from the database, we are going to process the results. And finally, 4, don't forget, clean up your resources. Now, normally I would not do this, but because this is a demo, I'm going to go ahead and outline this, and I'm going to leave these in here. But otherwise, after I'm done with each one, you should remove them because that is cruft. Right? Okay. All right, well, I need a return value here, so let me go ahead and create a list of persons, right? And this will be persons is equal to new array list, right? And I'll go ahead and end up returning person. There we go. And I need to bring that in. All right, there's no JDBC code here yet at all, right? This is just standard boilerplate stuff. Let's open up a database connection. For that, I'm going to need 3 things. I'm going to need the a URL, because where are you connecting to? A username, and then a password. So let's put those into strings. First of all, the URL, what are we connecting to? We're connecting to the Neuros server, neuros.unl.edu, right? Just like you did in MySQL Workbench. You are connecting to your database, not my database, so you'll end up changing that. Now, normally you would say, oh, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and connect to HTTPS or something, right? That's for web pages. That's a protocol for web pages. What's the protocol for JDBC? And it's right here. We have to specify that it's going to be JDBC and MySQL. Right? That's a non-standard protocol. That's what's understood by the library, though. Okay, it's not like you're connecting to a web page or anything, right? There are other protocols, by the way, right? Have you ever heard of SFTP, Secure File Transfer Protocol? You've probably heard of SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. All email is based on that, right? These are just protocols. There's HTTP, right? That's without any security. HTTPS is with security, right? So the way that you write these network protocols is like this, using this syntax here, okay? I need a username, and that's going to be me. Right? Of course, you'll change that as well for your database. And we need a password. And remember, this is why I told you to not use a password that you care about, because now you're going to be exposing it in your plain old Java code here, like I've exposed it here, right? All right, so now that we've got those things, I need a connection. Connection, and I'll just call it con, right? Is equal, you could call it Neuros connection or something like that, whatever. Doesn't matter, right? I'll just call it con. And I'm going to ask the driver manager. Remember that Oracle has published this jar file, which is called the driver. Inside there is a manager that is responsible for making a connection for you. So get connection, right? Using those 3 properties there. Your URL, username, and password. There are ways that you can take all 3 of these and put them up here, right? I don't remember off the top of my head, but there is a way to do that, right? And we do need to bring this in because it's part of the java.sql library. There's the JDBC library. Where is it? Right there, right? Java.sql. Just like java.utils is the utility library, java.math is the math library, java.sql is the JDBC library, okay? It's not going to like this because JDBC is, I don't want to call it old. I mean, it is old, but it's mature, right? It was introduced in Java 2, so over 25 years ago. 25 years ago, they thought that checked exceptions were still a good idea, right? And so we're forced to surround this with a try-catch. Right? How can you reasonably recover from a database that's down because, like, Neuros, the server is down, or that you misspelled your password, or that you misspelled your login or something, right? You can't reasonably recover from that stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to rethrow this. We're catch and release, remember? Throw new runtime exception. And I'm just going to rethrow it as a runtime exception. It's going to end up being fatal here, okay? Now let me show you what happens because remember I did misspell this password here. So let's run this and we see over here, access denied. Why? You're using the password, yes, but I'm not going to tell you that it was the wrong password. I'm not going to give you a hint or anything like that, right? F. Now this will work, right? There we go. Great. it worked. Right? Except that, remember, cleanup. Right? Now, whenever I teach file I/O, remember those three operations. You open the file, you process the file, you close the file. I always write code to open the file, and then I skip the code to process the file and immediately go to step 3 because I know that I'm going to forget it. So let's run or jump down here to the last step here and say con.close. Right? Once again, we're going to have to, we're forced to surround this with a try catch. Or sorry, I need to bring this out. Let's go ahead and bring this out and set this equal to null initially. Right? And then we can close it. And I have to surround that with another try catch. That's just an artifact of JDBC being poorly designed, or checked exceptions being a poor idea 25 years ago. Them designing it around those exceptions, nobody has done that since. If you ever do encounter any of these libraries like JPA or Juke, they do not have checked exceptions because they were a bad idea. You can add some defensive code in here. For example, if con is not equal to null, then you can close it. Otherwise, if it's equal to null, you can't close it because there's no function to call, right? And then you can also check to see if it's not already closed. And con.isClosed is not true, right? So you can surround those with a bunch of defensive stuff too, okay? If it's not null and it's not already closed, then close it, right? Otherwise, if somebody's done the work for us already, we're good, okay? All right, so there's step 4 down here. In fact, we're going to have to do some more on step 4 when we come back to it. But otherwise, I have a connection. What if we didn't do that? Right? Again, what if I don't clean up after myself? Now, 9 times out of 10, the death of the program is also going to reset all those connections. But let's go ahead and show what happens when you have a long running program, right? Because most programs are server programs. They're run, right? They're waiting for input. They're always running. You always want them up, right? Now let's go ahead and run this, and I intentionally put this into an infinite loop here. And let me show you that I have multiple connections that are now open to my database server. Show process list. That's how you can list all of your connections. This one is created by MySQL Workbench just to keep the connection open, right? This one, I just ran that one query, show the process list. This one is, and now it was when I ran that, idle for 9 seconds there by my Java program over here still running. See it's still running right there? Right? Now how long has it been idle? Right? 34 seconds. I'm not going to wait the entire time because eventually this will time out. You're not doing anything with this connection. After 5 minutes, and I'm not going to wait 5 minutes to do this, but after 5 minutes it'll time out and it'll reset the connection for you. I'll go ahead and terminate this right now, clean it up, and show that has now been cleaned up automatically through the death of the program. Cross your fingers and hope that that happens all the time, right? Because it's that one time out of 100 that it fails to actually close those connections, and now you're screwed because now you need to call these sysadmins, right? Okay. So always clean up after yourself. You're limited to 30 connections, okay? All right, formulate your query. Right? So I need a query here. Well, if I want to load up all the people and all their emails, in fact, that's what I should document here, loads all person records from the database along with their email records. Right? There's my documentation, right? And so I can get rid of this right here, okay? So I want all of those things. Well, what I like to do is I like to develop my SQL over here in MySQL Workbench to make sure that it's correct. Why would you want to debug a bunch of SQL statements over here in an environment that's not meant for it? So let's do it over here instead. How do I get all the person data along with all the email data? Select everything from person, P. What kind of a join should I do? Left join. Why do I want to do a left join? Email E on p.person ID is equal to e.person ID. Right. Because I want to preserve all of those people. For example, John and Jane here, they have no email records. Right? I'm not really loading up all people if I don't load them up, right? If I only have a regular old join here, then I'm only loading up Craig Council here. Okay? I want to load up all the people regardless of whether or not they have emails. Not only that though, but a left join is not really appropriate here. Let's look at this. There are a couple of issues why. First of all, when you do a left join on somebody who has multiple emails, what are you sending across the wire? And now this is actually substantial because the wire is actually going to Lincoln, right? And maybe it would go somewhere across the world or something like that. Or maybe we're paying Amazon AWS Web Services to query their database. Like we're storing our database and their stuff, and they're charging us by the byte that's being sent over the wire, right? I have now sent 30 twice. In fact, I've sent 30 what? 4 times, right? I have sent the UUID there twice. I've sent their first name twice. I've sent their last name twice, right? I've sent over a null byte for the middle name, even though I'm not even going to use it, right? So I don't want a left join because I will be pulling over redundant data over the wire, and that's really my bottleneck. That is still the bottleneck in 2025, right? I could load up a semi-truck full of hard drives and drive it across country as slow as I want, and I would deliver more data than you could over the fastest network that you have right now, right? That's the level of throughput that we're still dealing with. That's still our bottleneck for computing. It's network speed, right? So even if you had a dedicated fiber optic T1 line or whatever, right? I could still beat you by loading up a semi-truck full of hard drives. All right, so we don't want a left join, right? And so let's go ahead and simplify this. Let's just worry about the people first, right? Select everything from person, okay? Well, using the star operator here, you're sending over unnecessary null bytes because of the middle name. We're going to ignore that, right? But more to the point, what if some DBA comes along, database administrator, and they change our table because their manager told them we should start storing people's images in this database as well. Those are called blobs, binary large objects, right? And suppose now that we're storing several megabytes of data in another column over here, right? And we're pulling that across the wire now, even though we're not using it, even though at the end of the day we're ignoring it, right? We're wasting a whole bunch of bandwidth. Let's be more intentional. Only pull that which you need. Person ID, UUID, first name and last name. There. Now we're protected against any DBAs changing the data model on us, right? Or at least adding to the data model. If they change the data model and change it to last name, of course, now we're really screwed. But hopefully this protects us at least against adding data, right? There, that's what I want. Now that I've developed my query over here, I'm going to bring it over here. Cut and paste it. String query is equal to this. Right? That semicolon right there is actually optional in Jdbc. Right? Over here, it ain't optional. If you don't have that semicolon, it's not going to run. Right? That's a syntax error because there's no semicolon. But Jdbc will automatically put that in there for you. Right? So you can leave it off because if you leave it in, leave it off. Be consistent about it. I leave it off because I don't like seeing 2 semicolons there. Right? It's confusing. Right? All right, there's the query. Let's go ahead and prepare the query. This is where the prepared statement comes in, and I'll just call it PS here. Your connection is responsible for generating your prepared statement. So prepare statement, SQL, query there. Okay. Let's go ahead and bring that in from the SQL library. There we go. There are other types of statements. There are just regular statements. There are a couple of other types. I'm not even going to cover them because they're super dangerous, right? They leave you open for what's called an SQL injection attack, and we're not going to do that. I'll show you what it looks like later on, but we're not going to allow that to happen because we're always going to use a prepared statement. Once again, we are forced to surround this with a try-catch because of, oops, that's not what I wanted. Oh well, I'll put it up here. Prepared statement, PS is equal to null. Initialize it to null. All right, there we go. And then we're going to prepare the statement. Don't forget, your statement is also a resource. Right? Possibly it's keeping another connection open. So let's go ahead and close it down here. If it's not null and it's not already closed, then close it. Now, why did I go in that order? We created a connection. That connection created a prepared statement. Then we closed the prepared statement and then closed the connection. Was that order important? Creation patterns and deletion patterns are reversed. So if A creates B, B creates C, then you need to delete C, B, and then A, right? Or clean up in this case. All right, that was prepared. That was my prepared statement. There we go. And now let's go ahead and move both of these into the block up here. Right? Oh, and then also let's take care of this right now. We're going to take care of that to do and throw it as a runtime exception. There might be a configuration where you can take that auto-generated code and you can say, no, generate this code instead. Find out, you can do a deep dive into Eclipse setups yourselves. All right, execute this statement. All right, so result set, that's the thing that's going to be returned to us. And here I'll just go rs is equal to ps.execute. Execute query is what you want. Right? And we do need to bring that in as well. But before we forget, remember that the result set is also a resource. So once again, let's come down here and rs, if it's not closed, if it's not null and it's not closed, close it. Okay? That means that we need to bring the scoping back out over here, just like we did with the prepared statement. And there we go. Prepared statement. Process the results. Okay? Now, the way that this works is, let's go ahead and execute this. Oops, I forgot my semicolon. There we go. All right, there are 3 people in this result set here. This is what a result set looks like in MySQL Workbench. This is the abstraction over here in Java. Now, the way that it works in Java is you've got these 3 records. Initially, you've got what's called a cursor. You're pointing to one of these 3 records. Initially, you're pointing before the first one. So what you want to do is you want to say, go to the next one, go to the next, process it, go to the next one, process it, go to the next one, process it. How do you know that you're done? It goes past this. Now, the way that that works is, well, first of all, what kind of a loop do you want here? Do you want a for loop or a while loop? While, because you don't know how upfront how many are going to be in there, right? So while rs.next, kind of like a scanner, while scanner s has next line or something, right? Then go ahead and go to the next line. But this actually does 2 things. First of all, it advances that pointer to the next one. Then it returns a true or false value. True, I am pointing to a current record right now. Next, true, I'm still pointing to a current record. Next, true. Next, false. That's when it breaks out of this while loop here. Okay? So here I'm going to process the results. Okay? All right. So how do we do that? Well, it's pointing to one record at a time. And those records have columns: person ID, UUID, first name, and last name. So I'm going to pull out that data. String, or not string, but int person ID is equal to rs.getInt, because it's an integer, right? And you're going to get it person ID. This is the column name over here. Now, do you remember I told you you probably want the same names as your variables? And now here's where it comes into play. It's just basic CRUD, create, retrieve, and update. This is boilerplate kind of code, right? You don't have to think about the variable names in the database versus the variable names in Java, because they're going to be the same. UUID, right? UUID is equal to UUID dot from string, and then we can say result set, give me the string corresponding to the UUID column. All right? I'm immediately converting it over here to a UUID instead of a string. Okay? There is no rs.get a UUID because it's not necessarily universal. In fact, we looked it up yesterday. UUIDs, they come from the 80s, but the actual standard that established them as universal was only 2005, like at least 5 years after Jdbc was created. So UUIDs are actually, as a universal kind of thing, are actually only now 20 years old. I didn't know that. We looked that up the other day, but now we've got a UUID here. Right? So string first name is equal to rs.getString of the first name column, right? And last name. There we go, cut, paste, boilerplate kind of stuff here. Now that I've got each one of those things, I can actually now create a person. Person P is equal to new person, giving them the person ID, UUID, first name, and last name. Now it's probably going to complain here because I don't have a constructor that takes an integer, a UUID, a first name, and a last name, do I? Well, maybe I should, right? In fact, maybe I should, now that my objects, my POJO, these are called POJOs, plain old Java objects, now that they have a connection to the database, you know, a design connection to the database, then what we want is to have that kind of data, person ID, right? There. Now I've got a person ID, UUID, first name, last name. Forget about the address for now because we didn't design that into our database, but we do want emails here. So let me go ahead and generate another constructor here, and I'm not going to type anything. I'm going to go up to generate constructor using fields, and I want everything except for the address and the emails. There we go. And now that's going to compile over here just fine. You do need to be careful though, because where was it? Yeah, here we go. I'm going to move that down over here. Right? Because you do need to initialize the emails in order to add them later on if you want to. Okay? Lots of repetition here, right? Maybe I can consolidate it, right? Well, I guess this one is a random UUID. First name, last name. One of these probably should be calling the other, but I won't worry about that right now. Okay, I'll just make a to-do. Consolidate the constructors. There, and I'll come back and do it later. Now that I've got my person, I can add them to the persons list. .add p. There we go. Now I put the cleanup down here, but strictly speaking, and this is why I put the defensive code up here. Strictly speaking, you should probably close it after you're done with it. So immediately, rs.close. That way, if it's closed up here, it doesn't matter. We check to see if it's already closed, and we don't close it twice. Likewise, I'm done with that prepared statement, ps.close. So I'm going to close it right there immediately, because I'm done. I established it right here along with the result set. I processed the result set, close it, okay? Yes, you can close it down here as long as you've got some defensive code checking to see if it's already closed. Let's go ahead and run this and see if it works. I've got John Smith, Jane Smith, and Craig Council there. But do I have their emails? I didn't put that in the toString method, so let's go ahead and do that now. Right? Let's go ahead and change all of this. String.format. So there'll be a last name, comma, first name, and then I'll put into parentheses here the database ID and then their UUID. Right? And then I'll end the line, this dot last name, this dot first name, this dot person ID, this dot UUID. Right? And I'll capture that as a string, a result. Right? And then what I'll do is I'll go into a loop and print out all their emails. For string email in this dot emails, result plus equals, and I'll tab over, say, just to indent, and make it look nice, email, and then end the line there. And then I will return result. And then I'll fix my indentation here. Come on. Oh, nope, there's something wrong up there. There. Semicolon. There. That's why it wasn't indenting automatically. Right? So let's come over here and see what it looks like. Right? There are no emails. Why? Because what did I select? Only stuff from the person table. Okay? So back to the drawing board up here. Once you are done with loading up the people, let's go ahead and now load up the email records. ... For that, I will need another query. Query, right, is equal to some, well, first of all, can I use the same query again? Let's call this what? A better name here. What kind of query is it? It's for email, so email query. Okay. Now, do I want to just load up all of the emails? I could just say select address. Actually, let's go ahead and select all from email. Right. So do you want to do all the manual work of finding, okay, that belongs to person 30, I need to find person 30, give them that email. I need to find third person 40, okay, give them that email. Let's let the database do that, right? So first of all, I'm not interested in pulling out the person ID again because I've already got it. I'm not interested in the email ID because I don't have an email class that needs to store email ID. I am only interested in address. And I'm only interested in it if it is person 30, where person ID is equal to 30, in this case, right? Obviously, I would want to change that 30 to whoever I'm looking at the time. Right? So let's come over here and use that query. Right? Let's get rid of that endline character there, and let's get rid of that. All right, it's not always going to be 30. Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to parameterize this. Question mark, just one question mark. Right? That is a placeholder there. Kind of like the placeholders that we used over here. %S, those get replaced with these things over here. This question mark is going to end up getting replaced with whatever person ID you want it to be. Okay. All right. So for each person P in persons, I'm going to get their emails. So prepared statement, PS, except that have I already used PS? Yep, I used it up here. And that's another reason why I put it outside, because I can reuse the variable name. And that's another reason why I closed it here, because if I just reset it to be con.prepare statement, right, email query, then I would actually be opening up another connection for that query, opening up another connection for that query, et cetera, and I would never actually close it. So ps.close. Right? If this one never got closed, what I want to say is if this one never got closed, we would end up overwriting it and possibly keeping it open. Okay? I'm going to surround all this with a try catch. And copy, paste. There. Okay? All right, now we need to get rid of this question mark here, because if you actually ran this query over here, as it is, right, that's not actual SQL syntax, because question mark is not valid. Right? What we need to do is we need to replace that question mark. We are not going to do the following. Right? We're not going to concatenate it. This leaves you open to what are called SQL injection attacks. Right? And that's a security risk. We're not going to do that. Right? So we'll talk about that later in detail. In fact, in lab, I want to say 10, we invite you to try an SQL injection attack against your database. We show you how to do it. Anyway, select address. I'm going to have to set that. ps.set. And it's an integer, right? Set int. The first one to p.getPersonID. There we go. Oh, you know what? I forgot the getter too. That's okay. We can come back over here. We've got getters for everything except for source. Why do I have two sources? Okay, whatever. Getters and, oh, nope, not delegate methods. Getters and setters. There we go. And let's see, where's person ID? There we go. And I just want the getter. I do not want the setter because I prefer immutable objects. There we go. I've got that getter, and now I can get this person. Note here that if you had multiple ones, right, ... and then another question mark, ... question mark, it would actually be 1, 2, and then 3. In other words, it does 1 indexing, not 0 indexing. Gross. But actually, indexing at all is bad anyway. More modern, like JPA, more modern frameworks use what are called named parameters. So like a person ID, it would look something like that. That is not supported in Jdbc, unfortunately, because they didn't have good ideas back then, apparently. Right? They didn't have the intervening 20 years of experience saying, God damn, there are 10 question marks, right? Which one is which, right? If you'd had named parameters, then the mystery is solved, right? But anyway, we only have one here, so it's not that big of a deal. We're going to set that ID, and then we're going to create a result set. rs is equal to ps.execute query. Okay? And then we're going to process the results, right? The email results. ... Now think about this. If I did this for person 30, I'm going to get 2 records back, probably a loop there, right? What if I did it for person 10 though? There are no records. So the same pattern that I followed before is still going to work while rs.next, excuse me, right? What if they don't have any emails? Then what happens? There are 3 emails, 2 emails, 1 email, 0 emails. It's pointing where? before and after. So it will end up saying false. There are no records here. So we move on. Right? Otherwise, if there is a record, then, and we're expecting 0 or more records here, then what we would do is string address is equal to rs.get string address. There we go. And then I can say person p.add email, not the email query, but the address there. Okay. All right. I closed the prepared statement. I did not close my result set. Once I'm done with it, I close it. Okay. Now, before we move on, let's think about efficiency here. Right? On every single iteration of this for loop, I am preparing the statement and I am setting it to a different value. Do I really need to prepare it every single one? On every single iteration? It runs the same query, right? So let's take this outside. Let's move it up here, outside the loop. Right? Certainly don't want to close it inside the loop because we still need it for the next iteration. So we'll move it down here. Now it's not going to compile. We're still going to have to work on this here. But think about the efficiency here. We prepare it once instead of maybe we have 1 million emails instead of 1 million times, right? That also that's probably going to end up being 1 million connections for every one, right? So we only want one connection, right? This is not that. I mean, this has to be done because we are resetting it for every person in this for loop, right? So we're not going to get by with any efficiency improvements here, but this one definitely needs to be outside that loop. For that reason, I'm going to move the try out of it outside there and the catch outside here, right? And let's get rid of that and then reformat everything. There. By the way, you might be thinking, well, why do you have so many try catches? Couldn't you just do one big giant try catch and then do everything inside? And yes, you could, right? That's a design decision that's up to you. Generally, I like to make them as fine-grained as possible because if something happens in this block, at least this block executed, right? Or all the blocks before it, maybe. You would not want to do that if you want everything in a transaction. Remember, an all or nothing atomic thing, that if all 3 of these things should happen or none of them should happen. And by the way, you can't, by default, we'll talk about this later, but by default, they are all in their own transaction, con.rollback, right? There's how you can roll back whatever was done in that connection, and then con.set auto commit to be false, because by default it's true. So everything that you execute is in its own transaction. You would have to set auto commit to false, and then you can go con.commit or con.rollback, right? Like we did in MySQL Workbench. Don't worry about it, Yagni. You ain't gonna need that. All right, but it is there. Let's make sure that it works now. Should we be pulling all of Craig Council's emails there? A@b.com and C@d.com. Uh-oh, we did close it. All right, fine, let's go ahead and run this down. In load persons on line 77. Oh, darn it. I moved it, I thought. I moved it, but then I didn't, I cut and pasted. I pasted it, but I did not cut it. All right, that's why. All right, there we go. All right, let's run that again. There we go. Craig Council has 2 emails. John and Jane Smith have 0 emails. Okay? Now let's do a variation on this. Right now we're only pulling data. On Thursday we're going to start persisting, saving data. But what I want to do is a variation on this. What if you don't want all people? What if you just want one person? Okay? So let's outline those functions. Public, static, person, load person. By what criteria? We've got an ID. That's our surrogate key in the database. We've got a UUID, which is our natural key, right? Which one do you want? They're both unique because of the way we designed our database. Well, if you're having a hard time, if you want both cake and ice cream, what do? Give yourself both cake and ice cream. Load person by person ID. Load person by UUID. Implement them both. Right? they're going to be pretty much a cut and paste with one variation on it, right? And now this makes it so much more, usable and flexible, right? All right, so I just want one person. Well, I could call this function because I've already loaded up all people and then find that one person that you're looking for and then give it to you. How much data have I pulled across the wire versus what the data that you were asking for, though? Dump the entire database over the line just so that you can find that one record? No. We're only going to pull one record here. But there is going to be a lot of cut and paste because Jdbc code, CRUD code is a lot of boilerplate stuff. So let me go ahead and grab all of this. There we go. And let's go ahead and do it with a person ID. Okay? And let's just look and see what we need to change. Nothing here changes. Right? That gives me an idea. Shouldn't we move that somewhere else since we're going to be using that over and over and over again? Right? Yep, that would be called a connection factory. Right? So you can move that over, and that's worth bonus points, so I'm not going to do it for you, but I would move all this stuff so that if I ever need to change my password, I change it in one place, and one place only. That generates my connections for me. So I'm going to put in a to-do here. Move this chunk to a connection factory. Okay? Formulate your query. I want that person from person P where, and I don't need P there, where person ID is equal to, and there's my question mark, right? Because I'll be passing in this person ID here. Okay? All right, prepare the statement. Now make sure to ps.set int to that first integer is going to be the person ID that was passed into this function right here. Okay? Execute the result. Are you expecting more than one person? No. There's only going to be one person with that person ID, right? So let's not do a while loop here. I'm still going to do something. An if condition. Why an if? What if you wanted a person with ID 42? Is there such a person in there with ID 42? Nope. So I'm going to put this into an if-else statement instead. Either we're expecting 1, right, or we end up with 0. Let's take care of that error condition first. What if we have 0 people here with that criteria, that person ID? Right? What should you return here? So loads the data, including emails, for the given person defined by person ID, right? And returns the result. If no such person exists in the database, returns ... what? Null. I like that. All right, there we go. Returns null. Now, should we immediately return here? We have a result set open. We have a prepared statement open. We have a connection open. I'm not going to return. I'm going to create a person up here. Person. Set them equal to null. Person P, excuse me. And then I'm going to return them down here. P. If I never actually initialize them right here in this if block, then it'll end up being null. Right? So maybe don't leave empty spaces there, but I will leave that there because what's another alternative here? What else could I have done? Yeah, throw a new runtime or illegal state, illegal argument. No such person with person ID equal to person ID. Man, that's going to be real helpful debugging if we can't find a person, right? In fact, maybe there's a better way of doing that, like using a proper logging system, which is also worth bonus, and I will show that to you later on. Right? But for now, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to return null. Right? It's your responsibility now to see if that person is legit or not. Right? Person Craig is equal to load person 30. Right? And then let's see if he's there. .out.print ln Craig. All right. Of course, we're not done yet. Right? To do move that chunk. All right, here we go. Now this has got me, well, do I need to pull the person ID again? You gave it to me. So let's come up here and make this query a little bit more efficient. 4 bytes more efficient. Big deal, right? But if you're doing this millions of times every second, 4 bytes ends up being 4 million bytes, right? So it does matter. Right? You remember several years ago, Google changed their logo. It would look the same, but they just took out a few pixels here and there, and they made this as a big announcement. Why? Because, of course, when you go to Google, you load up their logo. And so that logo is, if you can cut that logo from 30K down to 20K, that's 10K times billions and billions of queries to Google every day, right? That made just those few pixels actually made an appreciable difference in the amount of data that was being sent over for Google, right? All right, so I'm not going to pull that because I already have it. I am going to pull the UUID, the first name and the last name. I'm going to create that person. I already declared it up there, using that stuff. And then I'm going to return it down here. Right? I still need their emails though. Right? So instead of a loop, I'm just going to have one process the email results. And then get rid of that. All I did was get rid of the loop and do it for one person, right? For that person right there. What else needs to be done? Oh yeah, let's get rid of that for a second. Okay. Test this and see if it works. There's Craig Council twice now, right? Let's see if it worked for somebody that doesn't exist. Craig, Kyle. Oh, wow. I don't know. What's Kyle Tucker's new number? Nobody follows baseball, right? All right. Well, I definitely know that it's not 42 because that's Jackie. Right? And there we go. Cannot invoke person get ID because P is null, right? So that's right there. Oh, it's in load person. Oh, sorry, that should be person ID. Person ID, because they don't exist yet, right? There. Now I will get a null out down here. Oh, I'm not actually printing it out. Oh, I'm printing out Greg, sorry. Kyle there. Print out Greg, and I'm expecting him to be null. There we go. Not a null pointer exception, it's just that it's null because there is no such person as Kyle. Right? All right, so I think we could do it in 4 minutes here. Let's go ahead and copy all of this, and let's do it for UUID instead. Right? So right now I've got a duplicate, so I'll change this to UUID, this to UUID, right? UUID, right? Loads the data including emails for the given person defined by UUID and returns the result. If no such person exists in the database, returns null. Right? All right, so same thing there, but I would of course want to start putting this into another connection factory where not person ID is that, but UUID is that. Remember that UUID is not an integer, it is a string, and so I'll put in UUID there. Right? Oh, .toString, because I can't just put the raw UUID in there, that's an object. Here I will need the person ID, so let's go ahead and change this to person ID instead of pulling the UUID, which I already have. Right? And I can get rid of that. And then int person ID is equal to rs.getInt of person ID. Okay, first name, last name, and then UUID. Same thing there. Nothing has changed here. Oh, except for that I need the person p dot get person ID. Oh, now I'm thinking that maybe we have a design issue here, right? Maybe we do need to check to see if it's null here. If person is not equal to null, then you can get their emails. Yeah, there we go. That's okay. What? Not person P. Sorry, P. That was actually the problem before, where it was getting their emails and then it would have a null pointer exception right there. I should probably have it checked here to see if it's null. But DRY. Remember the DRY principle? Don't repeat yourself. Look at this chunk of code right here and look at this chunk of code of loading up all the emails. Repeated, right? Let's put that into another function. For that, I'm going to put it into a private function. private static void load emails of person P, because I already have a person. I'm going to expect that there is a person there. Okay, if they're null, if P is equal to null, then immediately return. Don't do anything. Right? Otherwise, you're going to do this stuff right here. Right? And let's move that loading up emails right there. Right? Now, there's still some issues here because we don't have our own connection. We don't have our own prepared statement. We don't have our own result set here. So we're going to have to copy pasta some stuff somewhere else. But once we do that, then here it is, load emails for P, that person that we created up here. Right? And then we can clean up down here. And then I can replace this code down here where we're loading up all these email records with this code right here. And I don't need to null pointer check anymore here at all because I'm doing it in the function. Okay. Now, let's see, we need a connection. So once again, we would cut and paste all this stuff, right? That should be in its own function or its own factory, right? Then we would have to cut and paste this prepared statement, this result set, right? So just really quickly here, what would that look like? There's the necessary declarations, and open up the database, move a copy of that up here. Right, there we go. Right, and not person ID, but P dot get person ID. There. Right. Now, one last test here. Remember, Kyle doesn't exist. Craig, who else should exist? What about that John Smith there? I'm going to grab their UUID, and person John is equal to load person based on UUID dot from string there. And then let's print out John there. Remember that we're not expecting any emails from him. Right? We're giving this a complete workout, right? Now this is not formal unit testing. This is ad hoc testing. I'm just making sure that each function works as I go along, right? Ad hoc, as needed. By all rights, I should put this into a JUnit test, but that's what assignment 2 is for, right? You're good on that, right? If you want to continue writing JUnit tests, go ahead, but it's not going to be necessary going forward. There we go. We got John Smith. We got Kyle there. Or we got a lack of Kyle there. There's Craig Council. So everything looks like it's working to me, right? It's passing the sniff test at least, right? That's what ad hoc testing is all about. Can you get it to print out the data loading from the database? Right? But otherwise, wow, 300 lines of code just for 2 tables, right? And that's just for loading. What about update, destroy, and creation, right? So we've got 4 times as much work here for 2 tables. Then we've got to repeat it all again for all of the other tables. Show tables, right? We've got to do it for ownership. We've got to do it for account, et cetera, et cetera. And now you see why CRUD is all boilerplate, right? And maybe at the end of the day, you do want to use a library of something like this because it will reduce the amount of work. But for us, we're still going to be using Jdbc because that's the first step to learning how you use this over here, right? There really is no design here, right? I mean, there are small design issues, like what happens when it doesn't exist. Do you throw that exception? Where was it? Do you throw an exception, or do you return null, or what do you do? That's a design decision. How do you reduce repeated code? By putting it into utility functions. Why did I make this private, by the way? I don't want you to, from the outside world, I don't want you to have access to this. I want you to load up the people with all of their emails, right? I don't want you to give me a person and so that I can load up the emails. I'm going to do that for you, right? Good abstraction. So loads the given person's emails from the database, right? And adds them to the person object, whatever, right? So thinking about the utility functions that would help you, right? My design decision here was to add 2 getters there, or 2 load methods. One for IDs and the other one for UUIDs, right? How you go about doing this, and one to load them all up all at once, right? So how you go about doing this to pull data from your database, that's going to be a design decision that you'll have to justify to yourself and in your design document, right? But think about ways of reducing the amount of code here, like especially this stuff. That should be somewhere else, right? All right, any questions on basic loading from JDBC? Yeah.
So if you were to create a connection factory, is it good to have them all in one place, or are you supposed to kind of separate those?
What do you mean? All the connections?
Yeah, like.
All right, so resource management. Whoever asks, so the connection factory is responsible for creating that resource. Then it gives it over to you. You now own that resource. So now you're responsible for it. You need to close it if you do it. If anybody closes it, it's now you. That transfer of ownership is what happened. You now own it, you're responsible for it. You could have a connection factory that took the connection back and then closed it for you. All that would be is something, like this chunk of code right here. I guess I didn't copy it there, but this chunk of code, but for the connection only, right? It's a one-liner. Generally, you should prefer functions that are not one-liners, but maybe you've got an argument in favor of that in this case. Now, in real applications, you're going to have what's called a connection pool. That's not something that we cover, but basically, the idea there is that opening up a connection is actually the most important, is the most expensive part of that, because it's that opening up and then that handshake, passing the password back and forth. Okay, now we're speaking, right? That's really expensive. So what you do is you do that once. Keep that connection open and put it into a pool, right? It's like a library, right? Now, anytime you need a connection, you don't open it up. You ask the pool, can you give me a connection, please? And then you check it out. Now it's your connection. You don't close it. When you're done with it, you put it back into the pool, right? It's a shared pooled resource, right? And maybe you open up 20 connections at once, and then anybody that wants it. Now that's more for multi-threaded applications, where you've got many things trying to get a connection at once. This is single-threaded, right? There's only ever going to be one processor and one process and one thread there. So you could go the extreme and have one connection and that's it. And then everybody shares it or something like that. But then that conflates ownership. Who owns this now? Who's responsible for eventually, shutting it down, right? And even connection pools have that problem. They're open and they stay open. So what happens when you need to shut it down, right? You need to write code somewhere that says, okay, the entire application is done. Shut down the pool, right? And that's a little bit less clear, right? And that's when, okay, unplug it and plug it back in. That's what you do. You end up resetting everything manually. But yeah, we might go over a connection pool if we have time. But again, it gets into multi-threaded programming. Not that terrible, but we can do it later on, right, after the break. What we'll do on Thursday is the same thing for person and email, but we'll do it for persisting it, right? This would be better to be called as a data loader or database loader. I don't like repetition, so database loader, right? Something like that. Let's go ahead and rename it right now. It's responsible for loading people and emails, right? Later on, if we wanted to add in ownership and ownership and accounts, I could do it in the same class, right? If you wanted to spread that out and have a database person loader, database account loader, you could do that, but that's going too far, Yagni, right? But I'm certainly not going to put persisting and loading in the same class here. When we come back on Thursday, I'm going to say that we want a, database saver, persister. Persister is probably better, right? But there we go. And so what we'll do is we'll say public static void persist person or save person or whatever you want, right? And it takes a person, P, and then it inserts all their emails, and then, actually the person first, right? Because we need to put the person in there. Insert into person, insert into email. dot, dot, dot. We'll take care of that one person right there. Import that. And that's where we'll pick it up on Thursday, right? Because if you look ahead here, what are you going to need? You're going to need that auto-generated person ID because it's a foreign key in the email table, right? So how do we do that? We're going to put data in, pull data out, put data in, right? Several different phases there. Right? But there's an easy way to doing that. So I'll show it on Thursday. Otherwise, I'll see you in lab. Oops. Transition.